Hello.
How you doing?
I am doing well. Can you hear me okay? I'm recording from a different room today.
Yeah, it's perfectly clear.
Oh, I love you for saying that. I've been dealing with sound quality issues, so it's been very frustrating, but I am so excited that we're meeting. Thank you for being open to this.
Oh yeah, no problem. Yeah, I'm blessed to be here.
Oh gosh. Well, why don't we go ahead and kick off with the same questions I ask all of my podcast guests, which are hello, hi, who are you? How do we know each other? And where can people find you online?
Hi, my name is I'm Franklin Edwards. We know each other through social media, and people can find me online at franklinthehelper.com. Franklin the Helper on Instagram or TikTok or Facebook. Everything is Franklin the Helper.
Franklin the Helper. And I will say, I hope you don't take this the wrong way, but your voice is so much bigger than you are. Like you have a baby face and then you got this deep man voice. It's awesome. I love it.
Oh yeah, I appreciate it. Yeah, I guess God just wanted me to have a voice that commands and stands out. So thank you.
And I will say we didn't just find each other on social media. Actually, you're located in North Texas, where I am in Dallas, and a friend of mine was at Kroger, and you were selling your book, and he was so impressed after speaking with you. He purchased your books for his son, and said, "You got to meet this guy. I just met him. He's selling his books. He's a writer. I want you to meet this guy." And so that's when I reached out to you. I went and looked you up online, and that's how I found you on social media because you made such an impression on him. And I can't wait to share this podcast with him because he's the reason why. But I think he reached out because I recently published my first book, very adult book. It's called High Tolerance. And I had my first book signing recently, and it was the scariest thing I have ever done. I've promoted a lot of products, I've worked a lot of events, I've done public speaking, all that stuff. I love when someone's listening to my voice. That's why I have this podcast, right? But standing at a table or sitting at a table and trying to promote my own book, I almost left within the first 10 minutes of my first book signing because I felt what I imagine most people feel when they have to do public speaking. And I didn't expect to be so scared and afraid. And if I didn't have someone there with me saying, "No, you have to stay, you've committed to this," I
Mhm.
might have just packed up and left and said, "Oh, I'm not the author and I gotta go. Bye." It was just so hard. Um, I walked out of my first book signing on the verge of tears, and it was successful by most metrics. I would say it was successful, but I walked out almost crying, saying, "This is the hardest thing I've ever done in my life." I've moved across to different states. I've lived in cities alone. I've done some hard things. Um, that was the hardest. So, can you walk me through your books? How many you've written? And what inspired you, where you're selling your books today, and how it's been for you finding courage in this space? Because I've only written one, and it is emotionally more fulfilling and taxing in a way that I didn't expect.
Well, first, congratulations on your book signing. Even though it might have been a challenge for you. Like the fact that you got out there and did it is still commendable. To answer your question, so I've written 15 books, and all my books are faith-based Christian books. 14 of them are children's books, and they cover like social, emotional topics such as how to apologize, always tell the truth, showing forgiveness, just be yourself, how to deal with bullying, how to deal with racism, speech impediments. Like I have a book called "It's Okay to Stutter." What's your superpower? Have faith. I'm trying to think of all my books. Say your prayers. Um, it's a lot of personal things that I dealt with growing up, taking accountability that I struggle with throughout my 23 years of life that I want to instill in children to help the world be a better place, because I feel like when you help kids, you're in turn helping your future, because obviously those kids are going to grow up, and if you teach them good values as children, then once they become adults, those values will show. And, the way you make the world a better place is by making the people in the world better. So that's why I wanted to, tap in with children, because I'm trying to look out for our future. And I also wrote one poetry book just because I didn't like how when I would go sell my books, people would walk by and be like, "Oh, I don't have kids," or if all my grandkids are grown up, but if I had any children, I'd support you. If I knew any young kids, so I wrote that poetry book for all ages, just so you couldn't box me into he's just a children's book author. Even if you don't have kids, I can still write literature that you can enjoy and can help you as well. And so yeah, my inspiration is just I like to help people, all in all.
Oh my gosh. Well, and you're touching upon something that I'm a huge proponent of more than ever, which is one, having values in everything that we're creating and we're producing. Whatever our job is, it needs to align with our values. And I very much hear that with you. But two, I love what you just said about adding a poetry book to diversify your portfolio. We know that the most successful companies, Amazon being a big example of that, they don't just get pigeonholed into the one thing that they were really good at. Amazon was really good at selling books. When I first got my Amazon account, the only thing they were selling was books. That was it. We know that Amazon does a whole lot more now than that. They do drop shipping and all of these other things. You have Amazon Kindle, and now you have an Amazon channel on, all these other things, right? Because they continued to diversify their portfolio. And I think that it's incredible that you were able to recognize that. And to hear that you want to inspire children through literature is just, it's wonderful. It's refreshing. I think that's why my friend was so drawn to you. I mean, you are in my lens as an older woman, 23 to me is such a baby. It's like such a baby. And yet here you are trying to inspire the real babies of it. And I love what you said about by helping children, you're helping your future, and yet you're able to delve into these really sensitive topics. You touched upon bullying and forgiveness, self-acceptance, racism. And those are really, really big topics for little minds. How are you able to make sure that your work is able to resonate both with such young children who are still grappling with what these ideas are, and then also their parents?
That's a great question. So how do I make them resonate with children and parents? I try to use vocabulary that's simple enough for a child to understand, but like profound enough to where like an adult can still get the message. I try to simplify the point I'm trying to get across in my books and get straight to the point by using like practical life scenarios. So I'll give you an example in the Taking Accountability book. The child, he steals, his mother told him that like he cannot have a cookie before dinner, and he took a cookie anyway. And my character Franklin, the helper, comes in and says, what you did was wrong. You need to own up to what you did and take accountability for it. And that, childlike scenario can easily resonate with the kid, because it's something that they might actually do. They might eat dessert when they're told not to, or eat ice cream or whatever. So I try to use simple, not only vocabulary, but practical situations that a child can easily relate to. And if I always believe, if you can make a child understand it, then you can definitely make an adult understand it, because adults should be able to comprehend, a 5-year-old reading level. So
They say that a lot too. I think that's what's really amazing about your ability to, I love how you said simplify the message, because in the medical world, my girlfriend is a doctor, and she was just explaining this to me this past weekend. She said, you can always tell which doctor actually knows what they're talking about and truly understands the concepts that they're presenting, because they're able to simplify the message and explain it to a 5-year-old. And if you cannot explain what you're doing to a 5-year-old, if you have to use these big names or these big words to describe something, that's probably a sign that you don't have a full grasp on how the system works, right? And in this case, we're talking about the human body. But I think that that could be said for my job. That's something I've struggled with. How do I describe my job to a 5-year-old? Do I really have a grip on what I'm doing? And so the fact that you're doing this through your literature is so beautiful, because I believe there's a book called Everything I Need to Know I Learned in Kindergarten. And it's this idea of these simple values and principles that we are given as children somehow get lost as we get older, and we pursue the mighty dollar, and we pursue external validation, and we're able to make decisions ourselves so we can honor our own lying and immorality, whatever it is, as adults, because we kind of stray away from those incredible values. And so the fact that you're able to create a story or book or literature or graphics that reinstate these values is really beautiful. What I'm wondering is, what is it that brought you into wanting to do that? Do you have a pivotal moment or a challenge that tested your resolve? And how have you maybe been able to overcome that to then inspire children to do the same?
So it's actually quite opposite. I had no plans to ever be an author. I can't believe I do what I do. So the way it all came about, I'll give you like a brief summary. Um, I was in Barnes and Noble in college. My grandfather came to visit me, and I love books. So I asked him to take me there to the bookstore, and we were in the children's book section, and I picked up a Dr. Seuss book, and I just flipped through it. And growing up, I was always told by my teachers, even up to college, how great my writing was. But it was kind of just in the back of my mind, like if sports doesn't work out, I could fall back doing something with writing. So I just picked up the Dr. Seuss book, and I just was like, I could write a way better book than this. And it was just like I googled his net worth, and it was like $75 million. I was like, like over the course of his life made that much money for this. I was like, I could do way better. But I just left it at that because like I publish books as well. And like most people, I didn't know where to start or what to do or how to publish a book. So it was like, okay, whatever. So 2 years later, fast forward, COVID happens, blah, blah, blah. We're kind of coming out of COVID. My mother reaches out to me randomly. Like, this is how I know there's like God is real. She just was like, have you ever thought about writing a book? And I was like, yeah, but I don't know how to bring it to life. And she was just like, I can help you publish it or whatever. And so my first book was Just Be Yourself. And the whole premise behind the book was, if I'm gonna just write one book just to say I did it, because it was honestly kind of a bucket list thing. Like I had no plans on trying to sell it. I just wanted to bring it up in casual conversation, like, hey, like I wrote a book like one time, and just move on with my life and go get a job or go do whatever. And I wanted to make it a Christian like children's book because my thought process was if I put this book out there and a child just so happens to come across it, at least they found a book that'll bring them closer to God, because that's just what I like to do. I like to help people, especially bring them closer to God. And I'm just like to do positive things. So that was my thought process, kind of like, you know what, I'm gonna just write this one book. If someone finds it, at least they found a book that'll help their child. And that was gonna be it. Well, I started to sell them, and people just loved the positivity, loved how it was helpful, loved how it was a story that was Christian based. So that just became the premise of all my books, and it kind of just started off of just who I was inside of me. Like it wasn't like a revelation, like, oh my gosh, I want to wake up and help kids one day. It was just like, you know what, I'm gonna just write a book, and if people like it, they like it. If they don't, they don't. And it just spiraled into much, much more.
I love that. Okay, so there's a lot that you just said that I really want to unpack that I love. First and foremost, okay, not you picking up a Dr. Seuss book saying, I could write better than this guy. Oh my gosh. I think that's hilarious on so many levels, right? I feel a little bit of a need to defend Dr. Seuss because I grew up with every Dr. Seuss book that there was on the bottom up. So on my bookshelf, I grew up with a lot of books. So I guess I should tell you that background as well. Both of my parents are writers. They are not published authors, but they write in their own. My mother is a creative writer, and my father is we'll say educational writer. He is a public. He's been his work has been used in various books, and so both of them are writers. So I grew up with a lot of books, more books than most children. I had a huge book collection at a young age, but the Dr. Seuss books were at the bottom of the shelf, which meant that they were the most accessible, and they're the ones that I read. So the bottom two shelves were full of all the Dr. Seuss books, and I had different versions of the books because I like the different graphics and pictures. I'm also a huge lover of The Grinch That Stole Christmas.
Mm-hmm.
That's probably my favorite, and so I'm like, oh my gosh, not you saying I could write better. Now, I have revisited Dr. Seuss more recently for different reasons. I made green eggs and ham recently. I don't know why. Don't ask me why. It just kind of came to me that I had green food coloring and I wanted to make green eggs and ham for breakfast just to satisfy the inner child in me. And I will say, rereading the book, I was like, this is very basic. Like it is very, very basic. And it's not real. It's very fantasy, right? So it doesn't always, like, the values that he was instilling or trying to instill don't always translate in the same way. So I think that's great. And I will say that of a lot of people who have created something, myself included, but even when I talk to other successful business owners, almost always it starts with one of two ideas. Either one, why is no one else doing this? Because I see a need for it. And then two, whoever's doing it, I could do better. And I
Yeah.
think that when there's this idea of, well, we need to be humble and how dare you, say that about Dr. Seuss and you could never, and all of those thoughts kind of flood in of other people maybe saying that. But I think that, to your point, when God puts it on our heart and there's that whisper in our ear of, you could do better. You could see someone's success and you know that you could build upon their
Mm-hmm.
success. I think that that is an absolute testament to what our purpose is. And like you said, writing wasn't something that you set out to do. It is as if he led you through various pathways. It sounds like you were going in for sports. What was your sport?
So I played football and basketball. Yeah, it was. I was sports, but it's interesting. In seventh grade, like one of my English teachers that actually told my mother I was a great writer. She made me want to go to law school because I remember she told me that lawyers got to be great writers, and you're a great writer. So if I never became an author, I'd probably be in law school. Whatever I was gonna do, it was gonna do with writing because that was my natural gift.
Yeah. Well, and I think, and I'm sure you're a great athlete as well, right? I'm sure that's a natural gift that he gave you too. And what I love about sports, and especially being in Texas, where it's a lot more sports heavy than where I'm from in California, is that I think that there are a lot of, again, values, principles, surrendering, hard work, ethic, all of those are great foundations for whatever you do next. Writing, on the other hand, is a skill and a tool that you truly can take with you and use the very rest of your life. For the
Yeah.
rest of your life, as thoughts are coming to you, you can put them into words. And I think the fact that I love it. I love when I'm in a space where I can talk about business and evoke the name of God, because I think that one of the sad parts that I've noticed in the business space is that we've really strayed away from honoring that. And even if it's watering it down to say the universe or our purpose or these other spiritual terms, I think it's a huge disservice to us as creators, business owners, people in society, to not recognize that God absolutely placed talents within us, desires within us that he wants us to pursue. And that's why I created the business that I created, right? So I have this business, EP Consulting, and yes, I do business strategies and all of that, but something that I think my clients get a little surprised and even sometimes upset about is that I start to challenge, like, all right, you're making a lot of money doing this, but is this that soft whisper that you're hearing? Is this serving your purpose? And how can we make sure that you're getting back to your purpose? And to me, it's really clear that that's what you're doing in this process. How do you, and again, I will say this because in business spaces, I struggle with it. I don't ever hide my faith. I'm always ashamed if someone tells me after knowing me for a little bit, like, oh, I didn't know you're a Christian. I'm like, okay, well, then I must be doing something wrong. Because you
Right.
should be able to spend about 10 minutes with me and go, ooh, she's got that Holy Spirit, the fire within her that clearly comes from Christ, even if I'm not evoking his name. But for you, how are you able to proclaim his name? Do you talk about God specifically in your books, or is it more like, Dr. Seuss, wow, his name is escaping me right now, the other Christian author? There are a myriad of Christian authors who don't say God's name, right? But that they allude to him. Are you evoking his name in your word?
Oh, for sure. Like I could quote one of my books right now, like my Showing Forgiveness book. The page directly says we are supposed to forgive others like Christ forgave us. When you open up my poetry book, like the first thing you see is my three Bible verses that kind of inspired me to write the book. Yeah, God is mentioned directly, like directly in every single book except one, and that one was basically an accident. Like I just forgot to like throw it in there. It's my How to Apologize book is the only one that doesn't directly say anything about Christ, but all the other ones like directly God, Christ, yeah, for sure. Like it's no beating
That's
around.
Oh my gosh. So I had a project in college where we had to evaluate who we were. And I've had a Christian faith my whole life. I came out the moment I started talking. I was talking about God and talking about Christ. So I've always had a very strong faith relationship. But in college, we had to do a project about, I don't remember who it was, but we were supposed to show the dimensions of ourselves. And a friend pulled me aside, a Christian friend, and said, "There wasn't God anywhere in that project. You didn't even mention your faith at all." And I was so ashamed because I'm like, oh my gosh, like I was focused on the external stuff, like what I do, what my passions are, what I'm studying, all these other things. And it made me feel a little bit like a failure because I was like, wow, how did I forget that? And I think it's because I've thought about that a lot. And that's where I try to say, okay, in every space, I want to make sure that I'm making it clear, right? But I think that what I found interesting about that was like, I was like, okay, I don't want to do that again, one, but then two, it's just, he is such a part of everything that I do. Like I'm constantly in prayer all day long that I don't always, I'm not always forward with it. And I would say, like, did you feel any type of way when you realized that this How to Apologize book, which is very interesting because it's in conjunction with forgiveness, right? Like there, reconciliation and asking for forgiveness, aka apologizing and recognizing our shortcomings and our
Mm-hmm.
flaws is such a big part of the Christian faith. How did you feel when you realized that, oh no, I totally left, you didn't leave his message out, right? You just left out his name and his word. But how did you feel about that?
Like sometimes like I kind of felt bad, but then I realized okay, I have like 14 other books that talk about God. I don't think he's gonna be mad at this one just doesn't, like, and every book I sign, I write the same message, just follow Christ, and then with my signature. So it's kind of like at first I felt bad, but then I was just like, I got so many others that like it makes up for it.
Wow.
But
That's
at
really
first
beautiful.
I did truly like kind of feel bad. I'm not gonna lie. I was like, oh man, I forgot. Like once it was already out, you know.
I did the same thing with my project. I was like, oh man, it's already out. And I will say, with my book, I talk about God a little bit, like very, very little bit, very, very high level, like not too deeply. But the entire process, I did not start penning my book each day without a prayer. I had a specific same prayer I prayed every single time. Because if nothing else comes from the books I produce, this podcast I produce, my business, anything else, when I die, the only thing I want is for people to feel compelled to and pulled to Christ. And I hope that I'm living a life that would showcase that through hardships, difficulties, that everything good that comes from my work, from who I am, what I'm bringing to the table is because of Christ. Can you talk a little bit about other things that you're doing to impact the community at the moment?
Yes, for sure. So, they were in my bookstore at the shops at Willow Bend Mall in Plano, but I'm gonna close that down because I like being more active in the community. I want to do more speaking engagements, and what I'm gonna start up is my bookmobile. So I'm sure you're familiar with the ice cream truck. They used to go around the neighborhood with a jingle, and I'm gonna do the same concept with books and ice cream, and I'm gonna hire drivers to drive around different neighborhoods, and it's gonna be like I'm gonna call it Franklin the Helper Bookmobile. So I'm transitioning from my bookstore into the bookmobile, and I also go to various Krogers around the DFW Metroplex and sell to while I'm getting my bookmobile business set up.
Okay, wait, this is incredible. I need to hear more about this. So at first when you said the ice cream truck, I'm like, wait, the ice cream truck? I've never heard of that. You're talking about the do 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 do. I used to run after that truck. Like
Right
I loved the ice cream truck so much. And you're right, that is a memory that doesn't really exist anymore. I can't tell you the last time I've seen an ice cream truck.
now, imagine like that same thing when you were a kid, but it's books and ice cream. Like it'll be my books and ice cream. Like,
I
well,
love that. I love that. And so I like what you said too. So you had a brick and mortar, a space, and you're closing it down. It does make me sad to hear that, but I also know that there's an evolution, right? And so if you can be out in the community inspiring, we need to read more, myself included. I mean, I think I read a lot compared to the average person. I try to read a book a week. I'm talking like an adult, a
mm,
full novel book, but I read absolutely every day, and I try to educate myself. And even then, I don't think I'm reading enough.
right.
And I think one of the competitive edges that I was able to have to do so well in school is that I love to read, and so reading assignments and writing assignments were natural to me because I was getting them as a child, right?
Right.
Yeah. So I think that's really beautiful to create an excitement around children's books. Also, I should just tell you because this is new. This just happened like a week ago. I wrote a children's book. It will not be published. It's a private
Mm,
book. When I wrote my book, High Tolerance, right? It's a picture of me with a martini glass. It's not a children's book by
mhm.
any means. What made me so sad was that so many of the very special, important children in my life were really hurt that I wrote a book and I didn't mention them. Like
Mm,
they couldn't imagine that Auntie Ella would write a book not about them, right? They think that all I do is I'm their auntie and that's my job.
right.
And so to think that, wow, when you and I first connected about this podcast, I didn't even realize that I would be doing that. And then I did. And I used graphics from online. Like I use the internet. It's a very, like I said, I would cringe to even send it to you because you'd probably be like, what is this?
Right.
But the fact that you do that all the time is really blowing my mind because I'm getting a little taste of it. I will definitely let you know her reaction because then I'll then I'll really know. Then you add this ice cream bookmobile. I think it's incredible. I'm excited. So if I can ask, and we can cut this out if it's uncomfortable, but can I ask, like, what is your funding situation? Like outside of what you're funding, do you have investors? Are you open to investors? If one of my eavesdroppers wanted to send a couple bucks your way, like how could the eavesdroppers support you in this awesome venture?
Um, I don't have investors. I'm definitely open to having investors. How could they support me? Yeah, just email me at what was my email? FCEdwards at franklinthehelper.com. And yeah, we can definitely set up a meeting, and I can bring my accountant, get my accountant involved, and my operations manager, because I would love help, like help me help kids, like for sure.
I love that. And I will say that I will link your email in the bio. So anybody who wants to get in contact with Franklin directly, just go ahead and click the episode. You'll see it in the show notes. But what I do want to say is one of the inspirations behind my desire to write this small little book I did was that I think that there is an understated significance of the relationship of adults in children's lives outside of their mom and dad and teachers. I'm going to take teachers because teachers are an extension of the parents. I will say that like I purposely wrote this book called My Auntie Ella Says because I wanted to emphasize and underscore the importance of children having multiple adults who care about the development and the love and the taking care of children. Do you have children yourself?
No, I don't.
I assumed you didn't. Yeah, I don't either. And yet sometimes when discussions about our future and children come up, I have been critiqued because they're like, well, you don't have any skin in the game. You don't have any children. And I'm like, I have a lot of children. I have a
Hmm.
lot of children. I don't have to give birth to be invested in the future of our nation, of our communities, of our world, of our civilization. I am absolutely invested. And just because I don't have children that I have personally birthed or take care of and I'm not a mother, that does not mean that I don't have skin in the game when it comes to the future of our children. I get really frustrated if you can't tell. It gets me really heated and passionate. And I want to start creating a space where we advocate for people such as myself who choose not to have children, not because I don't like children. I love children. There are a lot of children who need a lot more loving adults in their life.
Hmm.
And I think that there's space for people like me and you who, for whatever reason, right, do not have children yet, never will, whatever it might be. But just because a child is not, quote, yours, does not mean that you can't be involved in that child's life and development and growth, because you provide a safe space that maybe mom and dad don't, because it's hard to talk to mom and dad about some things.
Right.
And I think that the fact that you're doing that is so incredible. And like I said, I didn't even think about that when we first connected, because this is a new little project for me. But what I'm hoping is that if she does take this book to school and show her friends, is that it really underscores the importance of, there are so many adults that love me, not just my mom and dad, and that there are other people who are going to come in and take care of me. And it is our job as adults to be a part of the, quote, community, be
Absolutely.
in communion with each other. And the fact that you're doing that is incredible. So seriously, kudos to you. I have chills. I've been on the verge of tears hearing you talk about Jesus. You are incredible, Franklin. I am so, so grateful that you were at that Kroger that day and met
Uh,
my friend.
oh yeah, yeah. I just try to be the best version of myself, and hopefully, people can see it and be impacted, because that's how it all started. Impact, like Dr. Seuss impacted and inspired me to put a batter in my back to say, I can do this too, and that's what I want to continue to do for other people. Like, they see me and just feel moved. So yeah, I'm glad.
I love it. Well, thank you so much. And what I want to close this out with is something that I ask every guest. I'm on this path of Ceph. I call it Ceph balance, and it's a term that I made up that means spiritual, emotional, financial, and physical health success. And I find that sometimes when we're focused on one area of success, we sometimes forget the other. So as we talk about your Ceph balance, where do you feel the strongest right now? And where do you think you could afford to develop a little bit more?
Spiritual, financial, physical, emotional, probably financial. What's my strongest?
Mm-hmm.
I think my strongest one is spiritual.
Amen. It makes sense. It shows in your work. And then where you're hoping to develop a little bit more?
For sure, financially.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, I know. I mean, I think so. I hear that a lot, and the point of my asking that question is really to just showcase that, like, the people that I've interviewed that have said they feel the strongest financially, they're like, okay, well, financially I'm all right, but emotionally my relationships are crap. My
Hmm.
spirituality's gone. I've strayed from the path of my spiritual guidance and North Star, right? And so there's always room for development. I think that we were created, we're never going to be perfect. We're never going to have, I think life is whack-a-mole. And so it's like right when you got one down, that other part pops up, right?
Yeah.
And so the financial development, I think that absolutely, especially in the literary world, it's like there is such a need for us as a society to reinvest and really understand the importance of writing and educating and inspiring through the written word. And so I could totally see that. But I do hope that if anyone feels compelled today to reach out to talk to Franklin a little bit more about, setting up a business, if that's something that you can offer, or again, from an investment standpoint, if this is something that really excites you, then, and you feel motivated, I think it's great. And it's so clear that you are on an incredible path. And I'm really glad that we connected. I'm so grateful that you took the time to share your story, with us today, Franklin. Thank you so much.
Thank you for the opportunity. It's been a pleasure for sure. Glad we connected as well.
Thank you for listening in to Eavesdrop with Ella. If today's episode inspired you, please subscribe, rate, or review Eavesdrop with Ella on your favorite podcast platform. While you're at it, you should also send this episode to a friend so we can connect with more eavesdroppers just like you. If you'd like to be a guest, you can visit ellaparlor.com to learn more. Until next time, this is Ella Parlor reminding you to stay resilient, stay abundant, and above all, stay balanced. Thank you for eavesdropping, and we'll catch you on the next episode.
You've been listening to Eavesdrop with Ella, a production of EP Consulting. Some of the products and services mentioned are paid promotions, and any advice should be confirmed with a qualified professional. Opinions and ideas are for entertainment purposes only and belong to EP Consulting. All rights reserved.